All right, so I think we'll just start off with a little introduction about yourself, your website. Getting familiar with your work for the first time, and so are many of our members. And we'll definitely be sure to put all the links below after for everybody. And then we can, I guess, Michael, you've got some things you want to get into, so we can just start from there.
Sure, sure. Yeah, he invited me, Jason, on his show. I don't have the time, so we just turned it around and said, bring him on. He's more interesting than you can imagine. So I thought we'd just do it this way.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, sit tight. There's a quick little intro, and then I'll bring us in, and we'll rock. Okay.
Let's do it.
And hello, everybody. Welcome back to Unslaved. Happy to be back with you. Bringing on a first-time guest. We're really excited to talk to Jason Bershears. And Jason, so glad that we've got you here to talk about a world in crisis. And so many things are going on. And let's just start maybe with yourself. Just tell our members a little bit about who you are, the work that you do, and let people know where they can find more about you.
Well, I'm the host of Archaix.com, and I don't really focus a lot on current events. I'm a historian, and I focus on the details. And basically, I like to produce findings showing that much of history seems to be a mathematical construct, and it actually gives us a more broader perspective on current events when we see how they're connected mathematically to events of the past. This is basically what my channel is about. I've gone in many different directions, but I don't push simulation theory. But simulation theory is an absolute conclusion. It's a personal conclusion based off what I have found.
Yeah, I call this world in crisis again, not much to focus on current affairs. It is because the world is in crisis because they're not listening to alternative historians, Jason, David Icke, us, whoever it might be. They're not paying attention, or at least they're not paying enough attention. We have followings, so to speak, but we've also got shadow banning, and we've got massive take global from fucking IQ less morons, molecule minds,
Yeah.
all this. So it's not all roses. And so the world is in crisis because we have presented absolute gems of knowledge. I'm not saying we're all right, everything's correct. We've opened up doors, sometimes kicked open doors that have been locked for centuries with our knowledge.
Well, no doubt at all. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. And so that's the kind of crisis I was thinking of, is that we shouldn't be in this crisis. We shouldn't be having wars or rumors of wars. We shouldn't have violence of any kind. Just the very fact that alternative researchers, what they brought to the table about world history, about psychology, about the great thinkers of the past, should have been more than enough to enable peace in our times, exposing politicians, all of that's part of it, yeah. But just the very substance of what we do, by not being absorbed correctly by these zombified people, or also not, and I know that Jason has talked about this, the lack of collusion between people in this movement. And I'll be very frank about it. Who don't want to bond directly with others in the movement. They want to set up their own shop. They want to set up their own stall. They want to push their own narrative. And they talk a lot about peace, brotherhood, and changing and world awakening. They won't work with their brother across the table or down the hall. In fact, often they find nothing but rivalry. They're out to look for something where they can beat the other guy down. It's not a round table, not even in this movement. So this was my thinking, and Jason seemed very apropos, to that thesis. And we will get into specific theories as well. But just to kick off, I thought, yeah, here's somebody who's addressing spot on. And then don't forget, we've got all this social media. We've got technique that you'd think would also avail more of a gather of minds. Has it worked? I personally don't think so. I don't know about you, Jason. What's your take on the overview about that? And your experiences even with the alternative community in regards to research you've done. Would you agree with what I've said?
Yeah, I do agree. I'm on board with the idea that we just have some type of genetic failsafe that just clicks in right when we're about to make unique connections. There's something within us that retards human development. And I have theories. I call it artificial intelligence X, like whatever's running this construct. And so, in my own growth, I mean, I've been in publishing since 2006. I did it from within a prison cell. I had 4 books published in prison. I've had many books published since then. But as far as being a someone vocal and public, that only started 3 years ago, and it was a very slow process. I had like 300 videos up on YouTube before I even had 1,000 subs. Well, when I exploded fast. Within a year after that, I had 100,000 subs. But the response from the community has been bifurcated. So I've done about 100 podcasts on YouTube with different individuals, and some of them were very good. And then about 5 or 6 hosts of pretty large channels have since turned against me for whatever reason. I mean, it's odd. Some of the personal attacks are just really odd. I get it, and I'm not even bothered by people being triggered about my criminal history. That doesn't even bother me at all. I was 17 years old. You can either live with it or not. But I've moved on from that, but it's just so unusual. Some of the attacks that I've received, they focus on personal issues, my voice, how I look, tattoos. I'm not getting any criticism. Not one person, and I've called out some pretty big names, but not one person has stepped out to want to debate me on any of these issues that I present. Instead, it's just vehement personal attacks that have absolutely no substance whatsoever. And so this division that you're talking about, this divisiveness, this is something that's very inherent in the human family. I don't really think there's uh, I don't think there's like an agency out there just pushing all this divide. We know about the Mossad. We know about the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League. We know how they have agents stirring up shit everywhere. But really, it's not needed because humans do a damn good job themselves just being divisive.
I've said the same thing in regards to ScrewTube. What the hell are they shadow banning us for? Let's sit back and wait. We'll eat our own fucking children.
Well, let me tell you what it does. I'm going to tell you really quick. You know this by because of how you set your platform up, which I have basically followed in your footsteps. It's YouTube has really critically hurt themselves because they're so powerful. They have so much money. Money's not even an object anymore. They have so much clout in the world. They're now owned by Google, same people that run the world. So why would you even shadow ban panels when all you're doing is having us create paywalls? I have a very successful Archaix TV is very successful paywall. I make a lot of money. I make more money behind my paywall with only 2,000 subscribers than I do on YouTube, having 124,000 subscribers. That hurts YouTube because now I have some very valuable content that people want to see. I can't put on YouTube. I have a lot of videos on Archaix TV that the general public cannot see. So YouTube hurts themselves doing that. So I mean, these corporate decisions, they don't make any sense. And I think lately I'm seeing evidence of this, and you can quote me on it. But I am seeing, and a lot of people are reporting to me that it seems like YouTube in the last 60 days or so is completely lightened up on censorship. I'm seeing videos that would have never passed muster 6 months ago, and they're showing up, and they're not being given strikes. They're not being having their channels removed, things like this. And to add to this, YouTube started a new program on the 1st of this month, coming up November 1st, tomorrow. There's a new YouTube program. If you want to remove a warning or a strike from your channel, you just have to watch a little small series of YouTube instructional videos, and they'll remove those past strikes and warnings. This is showing me that even YouTube has begun to recognize how hurt they're becoming by all these channels just outsourcing and starting their own thing behind paywalls.
And for those who don't, elaborating what you just said there, Jason, is that for those who don't use ad blocker, it won't make sense what I'm going to say. If you do, and you try to, normally in the last few weeks, if you try to block their ads, you can do it successfully. However, YouTube has now discovered a way to have you disable ad blocker. But what they've done is they've added a tab just along the lines of you're saying to say, pay us a month. Now it's a pay-per-view, and we'll erase the ads. So you're quite right. There's something very strange going on. Of course, it makes them money, and that's fine. But that is the thing that they're doing because the other platforms, Rumble, Okfin, are also charging. So YouTube people are saying, well, we're going to charge, we're going to give you the option to charge. You can watch all the ads you want, and you don't. You can still look for free. But those people who want to look at things ad-free, out of your brain left, and in other words, you can now pay. So you're right. Somebody back there has been watching the alternative platforms, seeing how successful they are, and saying we're losing. And maybe even Google shares. I've heard reports that they've been plummeting. Facebook. I mean, what the hell's happening over there? It's going south. So you're right. These buggers, I don't have anything but condemnation for them, but they're savvy enough to know how the flow of the public mind is going. And then, as you say, they've realized that they're also been hurt by the blowback from the constant shadow banning. And I've been also waiting for a change along those. I didn't know what it was going to be. So what you're saying is quite, insightful. I hope that continues. And I hope also that continues it. See, when you talk about the blowback that you got for absolutely ridiculous reasons, this is the point. It's not, I've got it from being Irish accent. People don't even believe I'm from Ireland. Can you fucking imagine that? And that's just the stuff. They're going after your name. They're going after your background. They'll hit you below the belt because you're from Northern Ireland as opposed to Southern Ireland. That's enough reason to, say, right, don't want to hear what you have to say. And things that I never even dreamed. I'm from one of the most prejudiced countries in the world. And yet the internet taught me prejudices that I didn't even know in 30 years of growing up in the streets of Belfast. It gives you an education in just how petty, stupid, and backward. But going back to your case, now, would you say that your prison time was educational? Because this is a fascinating theme in terms of even world history, that a person sometimes needs to be somewhat deprived of freedom or they get serious enough on an existential level. I think of the great mysteries. Tell us a little bit about that. Would you think it was instrumental to your awakening?
It was absolutely key to the person I am today. Prison is about sensory deprivation. And because I got in a lot of trouble in prison, I didn't feel that I belonged there. I did rescue a 19-year-old girl's life. I did take her to the police station. I wrote a full statement against myself about my participation, but I am not the one that hurt that girl. So I was in the vehicle. So I wrote a full statement about my participation. I was incensed. I was enraged that I was sent to prison. And I was only supposed to do 7 years, but in the course of doing that time, I got in a lot of trouble. I ended up doing maximum security time, and that's even worse as when it comes to sensory deprivation. But there's something about maximum security a lot of people don't know that's different than minimum and medium security, especially in Texas. Texas prison system goes back to 1849. The prisons in Texas are old and antiquated. I was literally put into an environment that was packed full of very old books. Texas prisons don't invest money in their libraries. Local communities and churches take old libraries from colleges that are about to be condemned, take all the books out, and then send them to the prisons. So I'm in an environment where I'm reading books from the 1850s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and I'm getting an education from 19th century literature and books that no one else in the world could really have. And the reason I mean by this is not that those books aren't outside of prisons. We all know that they are. You can see my library is full of them. This entire library is nothing but 1800s, except for this back shelf is all 1700s. So what in prison I had all the time. People have family responsibilities. They take vacations. They have occupational responsibilities. Time. There's only 168 hours in a week, 365 days in a year. When you have other obligations, you don't have time to do a lot of research and reading unless this is what you do for a living. But in my case, it's all I had. In an environment of sensory deprivation, I let books become my new life, and I began to live everything that I read. And sometimes I only had access to very boring archaeological monographs. Other times I had some awesome epics I could read, some historical epics. Sometimes it was fiction. I very rarely read fiction. I wasn't really into it. Well, but sometimes it's all I had. But I had all these old books, and I began to write down the titles. I wrote down the publisher, the date of publication, and I started something. For even right now, on Podia, I provide free downloads to the public. I have a lot of free downloads, and two of them are one of them is the 1,200 and something books that I read in prison from the 1800s and early 20th century. And it's a title publication. It's basically my bibliography. It's a free download so you can see how I derived my education. The other one the other free download is 400 books that I highly recommend. I basically weeded out a lot of the garbage. Here are the 400 books from the 17 and 1800s that I highly recommend if you want to receive an education that's very similar to mine. And so I mean to answer your question, yes, yes, prison made me who I am. 26
Yeah.
years and 48 days of intense research. I had nothing else to do. And when I got out of prison, I had almost 1,000 handwritten chronological charts that I'm always sharing on my channel, things that I did. And you can even see the date on the bottom of the charts and when they were drawn. And I'm always revealing new videos with new research notes because I'm still not done. I have a lot of research notes from prison I haven't got to yet.
That's incredible. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
it is. And I admire you for that, because a lot of other people choose other roads and you find your calling. While you were in the gutter, so to speak, your head was in the stars. Which is not
No.
the case for a lot of people. And even though you say that some of the books are to be found in the world, it's in America, I actually agree with that to a point because when I got to the States myself for the first real intellectual time, there's three phases I had coming and going. By the third one, I was hitting bookstores and looking for these, paying more of an interest into the literature than I'd done before. And I found that although that is true, that it is unique in the world. This was in California. Could you remind me where you are, what state?
I'm in the state of Texas, real close to the coast, Houston.
Yeah, thanks for that. In California, I found that there was an overwhelming surfeit of great, great books. But at the same time, I saw that they weren't being read by the masses. They turn up in the backs of drugstores, gathering dust, whatever. And these are, I'm talking about the old out of print stuff, of the great masters who dwarf anything written today. The great, great minds. Uh, and they were largely unknown. And so you'd have to dig deep, like find a health research or something along those lines. Some of the great publishers that open your minds. Again, you've got price. Some of those books are priced very heavily. So then I started to realize, hey, although some of these books are actually available out there, it's gonna be a hell of a job to build up a decent library because they're hard to find and they're also expensive. And how many, when you're just working a retail job or something, how many are you going to be able to actually read? And then comes this other thing that you've just mentioned. Where's the time?
That's right. Yeah,
So
you're
my
right.
life,
All the elements have to be together.
yeah, my life went into sensory deprivation in the streets outside. I actually literally had to turn off phones, pay no attention to anything, not even family issues or matters, completely isolate myself from going to parties, friends, anything at all, in order to hunker down and digest these books because they're heady and they're vast and they deal with history and alternative history. So they're not something you just flick through like fiction. And I paid also, again, hardly any mind of fiction. There was some fiction that was great. I had to almost put that on the shelf as well. So we're similar there. And then you have the conscientiousness also to build up a library, not just for yourself. That's great. Most people would stop right there. But no, to take notes and to notes of notes and to compile those books and make sure they're always out front, not again to just throw them on the back heap, to make sure that you've now, got those in plain view or made them available, so that the world can see them is yet another chore, another task, because you'll receive blowback on that. Why?
Yeah.
Because everyone thinks that a single person or a single book has got all the answers.
And it doesn't. You're right.
The uneducated person simply cannot get this next thing in their minds. That you might read a book of 400 or 500 pages, one fucking line.
Yeah.
That's where the wisdom is, and the rest is throwaway. The world doesn't get that. So then when you have gone through, plowed through the hard way to find these individual lines or these gems, they think you're talking about the whole book or the whole scholar.
Right.
And they say, well, I don't need you, Jason. I actually bought that book that you were talking about. It's all in there, mate. And they'll do this. The disingenuous type of person says, well, I bought 5 or 6 of those books. Not realizing, no, I've added my own gray matter, my own gray cells to extrapolate from these books as well as read them. That they led me in the right direction. I didn't say it's all fucking black and white lined in there
Right.
in the way that I then later on presented.
Exactly.
You dumb asses.
Yeah, I get a lot of that too because I'll do a YouTube. One of my favorite things to do is when I do my YouTube videos, I provide these PDF downloads of all the data sets that I derive. When I'm talking about a particular topic, I say, hey guys, if you want to debate it, or if you think anybody in the world is qualified to debate against this and say that this is not the truth, here's all the data sets. Here's it all free. You can download the PDF. It's in the description box. Take care of your business. And what they don't realize is it took reading 300 and something texts to put that data set together. You know, when I cite the sources, people get overwhelmed. Like, whoa, who's going to read all these to even argue against you? Who's going to read all this? So it's a lot. Just one video on YouTube may cite as many as 30 different sources. And you're right, there's a lot of garbage you have to get through. But sometimes reading a 400-page monograph is really, really valuable. If you get 2 sentences out there that you would have never got, some gold mine data that puts a whole bunch of other stuff together for you that you would have not got otherwise unless you would have read that boring book.
Right.
Yeah, I've done that before with like Lewis Mumford on 1929 on Techniques in Civilization, one of the most boring books I ever read, but I remembered it because of very intriguing facts that the man presented on only 3 pages. But that's what makes the book. I mean, I find this all the time. I mean, even in this library here, some of these books don't have a whole lot. I mean, there's 2 or 3 pages in the book that makes the entire thing worth the read, no doubt.
Yes, and that takes patience to go through that. Number one, which most people don't have, with the kind of the short attention spans. But it also requires discrimination on part of the reader. They have to bring their own gray matter to battle. And this is where I think I've experienced nothing but this when it comes to those who don't read. If you dare cite a book, a lot, say you do, you make a point. You're trying to do it because you love this author and they've got great wisdom. The audience says, well, then I don't need you. I'll find that book. I'll pay $12 or just get the book free or whatever. That's it. I don't need you, Tsarion.
Right.
Because you quote so much. And I see there's lots and lots of quotes in your book. So you just got it from them. So I'll just bypass your ass and I go and get the books, put them on my shelf, not read them. And it's all over. You are just a funnel conduit for the knowledge of other people. This disingenuous obscenity is to sort of cancel your whole life destiny out. The amount of sweat and blood and tears that you put in, this could be with Carl Jung's collective work. So many others I could mention.
Right.
And they don't fucking know that you're not wearing a t-shirt. Oh, this guy that you read, Sigmund Freud or Carl Jung. No, it's way more than that. Because they don't understand.
Yeah, I get it.
It's together.
I get it.
You made a collage.
You take researchers today we are grossly underestimated, thinking we're just parroting and borrowing things out of different books. I've been accused of that as well. I don't understand that, like, in providing 250 something mathematical patterns showing that these historical events are not natural, they're absolutely too perfectly patterned. And then my conclusion in a video, well, out of these 60 examples that I just provided you in this video, they're inexplicable. They've been dated by other people, so I didn't make up the dates. Here's the pattern. Here's what it looks like on a chart. It's unbelievable. And then my conclusion is I believe we live in a construct. I don't believe that we live in an actual physical universe. I believe we're being deceived by the central nervous system. However, that's just a conclusion. And then I'll get some asshole in the comments section that agrees that all the chronology matches and it all looks good. But hey, which book does it say that we actually live in a holographic construct? Okay, you get little asshole statements like this, and I realize when I'm dealing with, I'm either dealing with a troll or I'm dealing with somebody who's not even qualified to be in the conversation. You just need to move
Yeah.
around. Not ignore them.
I've learned after the years of experiencing this, it's been wide-eyed about it, trying to hit them back, trying to pacify, trying to explain. When you find out that it doesn't work and you give up that nonsense, you discover exactly this. You fucking have a delete button on the
Yeah.
keyboard for them. And
Yeah.
that is because these people, you cannot argue with them. I don't care what IQ, some are more intelligent, some are not. It doesn't matter. They're not interested in the actual core material at all.
No, they're
You
not.
find this out. It's a smokescreen. They're not into knowledge. That's why they have no civility when they come upon you. They have the right to disagree with your conclusions, of course they do.
Right, of course.
But these, yeah,
But disagreements need to come qualified. And, an 8-year-old kid can all say, I don't believe that bullshit. You know what I mean? That's not, to me, that's not a critique. That's not a disagreement. That's just some trolling. A true disagreement is going to come with some type of information that makes you feel the way you feel. What? You know what I mean? Just saying, I don't believe that. I don't believe that crap. I don't believe that bullshit. To me, that's just trolling. A disagreement is going to come with some type of qualifier. They got to do. They got to explain why they disagree. So,
and if they had been, even if they'd been in support of the mainstream narrative, that's enough. Because the mainstream narrative is so full of fucking holes. You don't need to be an alternative researcher to find them. There
yeah.
is no mainstream narrative that is so coherent that the whole wide world should be believing it. It is so literally full of holes, just as it is to be explained, just like quantum science would be, right? Physics, classical physics was so full of holes that it had inevitably to change, or a paradigm shift, which breaks from, which is the breaking up of a paradigm from within, finally shows the metal fatigue. So it is with all knowledge. So these people who imagine that they are some sort of champions or spokesmen for a mainstream narrative, I don't know what to fucking say to you. Show you then, you're free to enunciate that paradigm to me. Before you've got maybe half a fucking sentence out, I'll point out where there's already a key mistake right there. And this is, I don't give a damn if it's the history of Islam, or the history of the Jews, or the history of Christianity. This is the hole they fall into. Just let them talk then. Just say, okay, you're a believer in the mainstream narrative. Go ahead. You got the podium, you got the soapbox. And believe you me, within fucking 5 minutes, they'll have hit you with things that are so contradictory.
I agree.
If you know what I mean, get in there, they'll want to not ever talk to you again.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I can go deep on it. I mean, the whole Jews are victim bullshit. The whole Trump is a patriot bullshit. Oh, yeah, listen, it goes deep. Can't even watch mainstream media. I start vibrating at a frequency I'm not comfortable with. Just listening to it, I got to stop it. The mainstream media is programming. It's for the collective, and they've got think tanks. They know exactly how far they can go and what they can say. And you already know it's only one script, and it's being parroted by 10,000 mouths. In all the deal. It's the same script. It's written at the top. It's absolutely total bullshit. So my girlfriend Dawn, she absolutely loves you. She's the one that turned me on to you. She's the one that keeps on telling me, "Hey man, you need to talk to Michael Tsarion." I said, "Okay." But people tell me I need to talk to a lot of people. And I said, "When you've got one of his books in your library, I saw it on the shelf. You need to talk to him." So I pulled the book out and I'm looking at it. And then she'd always tell me, "Hey, that's what Michael Tsarion said." I said, "Okay, I'll tell you what. Since you've essentially become my manager, so why don't you contact his people and ask him for a talk, a check?" So she's real big on the alternative movement too as well. She knows that mainstream media, CBS, ABC, NBC, BBC, CNN, they're all full of shit. They all work for the exact same people, and we know that. But you know what, Mike? There's a lot of people who will never wake up. They're not programmed. They're not programmed to wake up. They're literally zombies, and they are slaves to the information. This false paradigm that has been foisted upon the entire world. This I have I have literally come to the conclusion that if I hear anything on mainstream media, I can pretty much assume the exact opposite is true.
No. You mean, and also that, well, we know that the media, the average public is complicit in this because they're almost waiting for the new catastrophe or the new headlines or the new drama to happen so that they can then not apply their minds to that which needs to be applied to, which is the truth or which is the personal psychological development, whatever. Actually itching. The system only works with what they know we want, which is distraction. And so it's a win-win situation for the masses and the way the Black Lodge works, which is they say, you guys don't want to do what it takes to really matriculate and evolve. And we'll make sure that there's plenty of bread and circuses in, which is what you're really calling for as well. The audience has to be in the fucking arena, doesn't it?
Yeah.
As well as the Caesar, to have the gladiatorial games. And this is so often left out by teachers, so-called teachers on the net and other. You'll never hear them ever mention what the slave is doing, to enslave himself. When Aldous Huxley called it the smiling depressives who will be conditioned into loving their servitude. How come that slipped by? How come you never see any of these teachers, and I mean even right up the scale to the top guys, ever mention this? Because they know it's not fucking popular. And if they want to get viral, which they often do, they monetize themselves and get really, really viral out there, they will avoid uncomfortable truths. And so what happens then is it becomes all paper mache. The teachings, even the content becomes really superficial and lowbrow and sort of custom made for the lowest common denominator. And the heights, the real peaks of the scintillating knowledge that needs to get out to really cause massive change. It's it's like Conan Doyle said, mediocrity knows nothing higher than itself. It's one of the greatest fucking statements there is.
Yeah.
Mediocrity knows nothing higher than itself. So it's unable to even register what talent or let alone what genius is. And so we're always fighting that.
Yeah, I like that you quote Sir Arthur Conan Doyle because Sherlock Holmes is just like my favorite. What was it? The famous quote of Sherlock Holmes? Once you remove the impossible, no matter what remains, however improbable, is the truth. Yeah,
Must be the truth.
Yeah.
Exactly. And look at the wisdom in that. But see, he's talking there about the apophatic technique of deconstruction, which most people don't have. Now, scientists always claim that they do this, and that's, a conversation. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. The masses have no concept of what you're talking about. To be able to do that, Krishnamurti put it another way where he said, only when the false is seen as false does the truth stand forth.
right.
But that means the painstaking ability to eliminate from a particular content what is false. This is where the human race is lacking. And it's sadly lacking because we've had great teachers that have shown us the way, but they've not been read. They've been thrown into the scrap heap. And so this great technique of ability to be able to deconstruct the false, it is just not there. Now, you said you had several books out. What was the latest one? When was that published and what was it about?
Oh, actually, it's my bestseller right now. It's the only book that I've put out of its kind. It is literally my interpretation of reality. It's called Awaken the Immortal Within. All my other books are chronology based. But, this is more showing that the darker aspects of our reality can actually be used for a tool for self-improvement, and that the world is a dark construct, and that we are immortal souls literally passing through this, and that the idea that we can save the world is probably one of the greatest impediments to progress, and that the individual that begins to save themselves and save those that are around this individual is actually how the world improves. So, yeah, that's my latest book, and it's very different than all my other books. All of my other books are history and chronology.
So the idea is that Rudolf Steiner emphasized this as well, that although some of his actions showed that he still was willing enough to try and broadcast information that would help the human race. Well, what you're saying ultimately is that there is no teaching, so to speak, of those who are in the mix, because the simulation that they're in goes so deep. It's either in the brain hemispheres or the nervous system or whatever. And so to try and detach them from that lie, it's like trying to, the umbilical cord. We're sort of immersed so deeply in the construct that it literally, you'd only, make a mess of it trying to disentangle people. Is that right?
Yeah, Cicero said it probably more succinctly than I ever could. he had described the same phenomenon that when a person has descended into deceit or disease so far that the cure actually kills them. So it's the same thing. There's some people are so enamored and attached to this reality that to take apart this reality, the cognitive dissonance is going to be too much, and they're just going to unravel. I mean, this is what insane asylums are for. This is why we this is why some people's minds just break. It's this we live in a false reality. There's nothing real about this. And the more we study even the physics phenomena that's been presented to us, we find that it falls apart. Even the physicists themselves admit that the more we magnify material reality, it's relegated to nothing oscillating fields, and that there's nothing between these fields but great distances. So it's it seems like our world is more mental than it is physical. Yeah, it feels physical. Yeah, I can hit myself and I can hurt. I can feel that impact, and everything here is hard. But that's a byproduct of the central nervous system's ability. It's this fusion. The it's the central nervous system is like the bridge between the psyche and the simulation. And so even the greatest minds in theoretical physics right now are publishing papers showing that, you know, if we really analyze our data, it actually builds us a picture that we're in a holographic field. And this holographic field only feels physical because we're jacked into the central nervous system. And the central nervous system is excellent in what it does, making us believe the very holography that we're suspended within. And it doesn't matter if someone believes in simulation theory or not. It doesn't matter. What does matter is that the evidence by which that we derive to conclude such a thing is so unbelievable, such as thousands of mathematical patterns between historical events that have been dated by different areas, different cultures, speaking different language, found in different books, imported with archaeological findings. When you put all this massive amount of data points come together, they form data sets that are unbelievable. History could not have unfolded this way. These Fibonacci, these curvature equations that are found in the unfolding of historical events, these pi and phi ratios that are found, absolutely giving you such clarity that they have predictive value. In order to find these things and demonstrate them in charts and show everybody the source material, show everybody the math, pull out the calculator and challenge people to pull their calculators out, look for yourself, and to find this perfection in the historical record, it completely undermines everything the scientific world has taught us. These events weren't random, they were constructed. Did they actually even happen? I don't know. I just know that they're in the field for us to discover, these little Easter eggs that we find in all these old historical books. And when we apply arithmetic to them, they fit perfectly within this construct. I am a simulationist. It's a personal conclusion. But when astrophysicists and theoretical physicists are now publishing papers saying the exact same thing, but from a totally different vantage point, it makes me pay attention. It doesn't mean I'm going to promote it and try to force people to believe in simulation theory. It means that they are now starting to look from their perspective at scientific phenomena, for which I agree from a totally different perspective, just using history and arithmetic. So I'm saying all this because I agree with you that it is really frustrating to hear this from people about when they isolate these particulars and they disagree with us. Hey man, how'd you get that conclusion after this? And they haven't even read the book or the whole library by which you derive that conclusion. I get that frustration. I feel it all the time. But where you and I may differ a little bit, Mike, is that I believe this construct was put here for a reason, for us as divine beings to flow through it, learn what we can, acquire these experiences, acquire this knowledge, and move on. And I do believe that there are many people in this construct that are in this feedback loop. This is a program, and we've been through it before. And this is why we experience synchronicities and deja vus, Mandela effects, these little things that don't make sense to us, but it's an awareness. It's when a spiritual being absolutely stops for a minute and realizes, holy shit, And I already lived through this experience before. This is my first time through this routine or subroutine or program. Just happened that made me feel that I just had this whole conversation once in the past with slight variations. One of my favorite researchers is Alan Vaughan, and he said that history repeats itself, but with variations. And that too is supportive simulation theory, because in simulation theory we have history has happened multiple times, and there have been very slight tweaks and slight variations. But it seems that there are governors set in place over this construct, and they take care of the little mistakes because programming has default modes. Programming has overrides. Programming also deteriorates. So there are things that when a lot of people in the construct, these are personalities that are jacked into the sim, start believing in a certain paradigm, the certain paradigm that is believed in starts to produce phenomena. It's like a mirror effect. Reality begins to reciprocate with the collective, and this is the danger of the media. You and I agree a lot, but I'm gonna tell you what, my girlfriend heard you say what you just said. He is absolutely a 100% Steiner disciple. Yeah, Don loves Rudolf Steiner. Absolutely.
Yeah, he was an interesting character because he again did the opposite of a lot of what he believed. Because of his humanitarianism, he still went around and killed himself. With these extraordinary schedules that he had to go to work in those clubs. This is during the wars. This is during deprivation when people couldn't even travel. So he basically killed himself, and yet a great deal of his philosophy was about leaving people to themselves and not going out of your way to unplug them from the matrix, so to speak. David, because you studied simulation theory, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just have a few questions just out of my own curiosity.
Sure.
I haven't studied it to the depth that you have, my man, and I just wondered. One thing I always think of is all of this information is passing through our heads, right? So we're reading this information, and then there's the idea that sort of humans project back upon reality, whether it's a reality or a simulation or not. And so I guess the question is, how much of the simulation is actually in the physical reality versus within the minds of and even the genetics of the beings that are viewing reality. I guess this is the age-old debate, and it's not
Right,
something you can
right.
solve in one sitting, but you know what I'm talking about, right? Is like one side would say the illusion and the simulation is in the reality, and then we perceive it, but it's also the other side would say, no, it's the illusion and the simulation is in the perceiver. And the only reason we have the language to say, oh, it's some kind of computer simulation broadcast, or it's some kind of fake overlay or something, is because we've been recently given access to technology like computers.
Right.
And so the vast majority of our minds and our research is now done through the medium of technology. And so as we've been, the one theory is that because we've been having access to this since the 90s, our minds are actually starting to think like the computers. And therefore, we are concluding that reality is a computer-like simulated construct.
No, right. You're talking about borrowing frames of reference. But listen, I can sum it up pretty. I've summed it up so many times. I can sum it up right now, so you can have a really good idea of where I'm coming from. All right. I believe humans are on the outside of the construct. I believe we are on the outside of the construct. I believe that if I can show anything is true today, that means it's probably always been true. I do not believe that technology is anything novel. I've seen too much evidence from the archaeological record of ooh parts that show me evidence that even inside the construct, we've been technologically advanced before. Therefore, this construct is only called a simulation because that's our modern frames of reference. But I believe it's a spiritual technology that's far more advanced than we can replicate from inside. Because in here, we're coming from a subjective sphere. There's no true objectivity inside this experience. Now, when I say construct, I'm also including your avatar. Your body does not belong to you. This what you see right here tattooed, my whole body, this belongs to the construct. I had to borrow it. My personality was injected into it. this part of the construct in order to interface with this construct. I needed an avatar, which is a part of the construct itself, in order to experience the construct. The only thing real here is my personality, the true intellect behind the spiritual being that is jacked into this avatar by virtue of the central nervous system. I'm somewhere outside the construct. I'm experiencing a time dilation just like you are. We have been made to believe that there is 5,000, 10,000, 85,000, 6 million years of history in the back, but it's all background programming. Every bit of that. We don't really know when the program began. Did it begin in 1917 with the Balfour Declaration? We don't know. All we know is we have some humans alive that are still over 100 years old. We can go back. I don't know. But I have identified a reset protocol embedded in history, and it's like clockwork. But it doesn't mean the world is only 138 years old. It means that this entire film, this entire construct of reboot every 138 years, and during that millisecond, it edits out material and it edits in new materials. There are changes to geography, changes to maps, changes to human awareness, changes to human populations. There's all kinds of unusual edits that happen at this pulse. It's attached to the fine kosher constant. But you and I are not here. We're on the outside of the construct, participating in events on the inside because we've borrowed these avatars which belong to the construct. Now,
And if I may, real quick, Jay, because this is good. I'm hearing what you're saying, and you can also, and Michael, maybe you're thinking about this too, that you can hear with what Jason's saying that it might even just be different language applied to what maybe the ancients used to call, the immersion of spirit into matter. You can even look at some of the patterns that Jason's talking about. There's another way of seeing it as opposed to just like some kind of false computer simulation. You could also look at it as the cycles of what's going on in the astrological, the astronomical sort of Swiss watch going on all around us in reality. That's there's those momentous occasions we've talked about that you can see the ebbs and flows through time, and you can bring in a lot of philosophy too to this. And basically what I hear is just maybe new language and a new perspective on some of the older ways of describing really some of these same phenomena. You know what I mean?
yeah, there's no doubt. It's all coding. Everybody that's coding, and each civilization in the past interpreted that coding in a different way. The Aborigines of Australia called it the dream time. The ancient Native Americans called it spirit walking. And then the Vedic and the Dravidian concepts, when later Hindu, it was the Maya. It's the world of illusion. So yeah, and there's a lot more examples than that. But it is the same thing. It is the idea that maybe reality isn't as fixed as we think. And I've experimented with it. I've played with it. I've done things on my own with my own following on YouTube where I had called out things. Hey man, check this out. This is what I'm going to do. This is the direction I'm going. We're going to see how long it takes to bear fruition, and it does. And I've showed multiple times. It's part of the reason for my popularity. I have often told my listeners my anticipations before they happen. What I'm going to do, what I'm trying to accomplish, and then they happen. And they've grown with me. I started my YouTube channel living on a motorcycle with a backpack with $37 in my pocket, and you can see that in my first videos. And I started, my growth was very slow, and I was doing manual labor. I was working for myself, building koi ponds and picking out a flagstone. And I just grew my company, Paradise Rock Gardens, and you can see, I give examples in my videos of what I'm doing. But the whole time I'm doing it, I am telling my listeners, back then it was 200 listeners, then 500 listeners, then 700 listeners. And I had 300 videos with 1,000 listeners. And I was telling them, hey guys, I'm only doing this temporarily because I'm going to explode. And I'm going to start sharing with the world all my historical material that all these boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of research notes from prison in my dad's house. One of these days, I'm going to have my own place. I'm going to have my own studio. And I'm going to spread all these notes out. I'm going to start sharing them with you guys. And I do that. I've done all that. But it's because I believe that there is reciprocation between the individual, the highly individualized, immortal soul, and the construct. Once you have that awareness that the construct will build for you, and that you don't have to do it yourself, it will reciprocate, and it will begin to build the very world that you imagine. but you've got to take the initiative. There must be an impetus. There must be some type of reciprocal behavior by the avatar, because the mind inside the avatar can daydream and fantasize. You can dream of screwing Heather Locklear 1,000 times for 1,000 days in a row with your head on your pillow as you go to sleep, and you're never going to screw Heather Locklear. It's not going to happen. Fantasy and daydreams never accomplish anything. But as soon as you have an idea to do something and your avatar moves in that direction, all of a sudden the construct starts putting all the materials, the people, the finances, everything you need to accomplish that. It works with you. And I've seen this and I've provided in numerous examples on my own channel of how this has worked in my personal life. And that's what I wrote a book about, Awaken the Immortal Within, showing the techniques by which I do. It's not law of attraction. It's totally different. This reality will work with you. And I also show examples how this exact same method is how the media creates the world we live in. How how mainstream media literally creates this demon-infested, fucked up reality we live in merely by reporting events in such a slant that whether they're true or not, the belief that they are true will create the event and the situation itself. So, I mean, these observations are why I'm a simulationist. It's why I believe the way I do, is because there's no way that all these things could be true. I am not able to compartmentalize. And I say this on my channel a lot. I can't once I accept a piece of data to be true, it must fit into my paradigm somewhere. So I can't compartmentalize and say, well, I believe this, 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 and this. But this over here, I believe that too, but it just doesn't fit here. I can't do that. I'm going to find a place for it. And the only way that you can find this type of synthesis with all this variant data is if we live in some type of holo field. Because in a holo field, all kinds of disparate data can coexist. It's like a kaleidoscope. You only see from your vantage point, but as soon as you change your coordinates, you see a whole other world and possibilities. In physics, it's called potentia. There's a whole other field of potentia available to you as soon as you change your coordinates, your vantage point. So this is why I'm a simulationist. I'm not a simulationist because I'm smarter than anybody. I got an 8th grade education. I'm 100% self-educated. I am a simulationist because the amount of data that has passed through my mind does not make sense. It's too perfect unless I'm in some type of data field. And I just looked a little too deeply and saw all this. And I see the editing process, and I see how other people's lives are, and I can see that people who are effed up, evil, no good, no morals, no moral compass, no conscience, no regard for others, and they still succeed. They're still financially successful. They do all these things, and I observe this, and I look and say, "Wow, they're interacting with the field." And I realized, wait a minute, I believe in an oversoul, but I don't believe the oversoul is going to dictate how events go on the inside of the field. I believe this field is quarantined. So things can be done inside here that would never cross-contaminate with the real reality outside. Like I said, I believe humans are on the outside. We are on the outside. But I see how true evil can thrive in this environment. And that can't be true unless this construct, this field is totally neutral. It has a mirroring effect. It will mirror both good and evil. If you project all this avarice, and you project you want this wealth, and you don't give a damn about other souls in here, and you don't care, it will reflect that back as circumstance, and it will give you victims, and it will give you great wealth, and you will become what you want to become. It's completely neutral. It's a neutral field. And then there's those of us who work for what we want, and we work with the field, and we live by the dictate of harm no one. Do whatever I want, harm no one. That's what I mean. And I believe the oversoul honors that. But there's not a lot of interaction with the oversoul. Whatever you want to call it, the creator, the God, the Jesus Christ consciousness, I don't care. I don't care about no one's personal beliefs. To me, it's just the oversoul. The oversoul has literally allowed for this type of construct because it shows through good and evil. A construct like this that is totally neutral, which will allow you to do whatever you want. In the end of that program, that oversoul is going to know exactly what kind of immortal soul you are. 100%. Because you were given both good and evil, and you took the path you took. So, like I said, this is all theory. This is all theory, and this is where I went after a lifetime of research.
Well, the philosophy of freedom leads in this direction as well. It encompasses a lot of what you were saying. That freedom was given unto man as the basic archaeological principle, precisely so that you're free to do all the evil you want to do. Right? So the good and evil are emanations of a more underlying freedom, which man did not attribute to himself. He just uses it. He just finds it in the world. And then he either abuses it or he contemplates it and realizes, my God, this has to be, a verification of the ultimate goodness of the cosmos, because only a good creator, as it said, would attribute to us the freedom to do everything against the edicts of the creator. So, what you're saying sort of fits with that. So does reincarnation, Nietzsche's eternal return, Heidegger's facticity. There's a lot of philosophical points that sort of back this up, including, but it's somewhat Gnostic. So, are you a believer in, say, the concept of the Archon?
Well, I do. I have read a lot of Gnostic material. As a matter of fact, one of the core messages on my channel is about the Phoenix phenomenon. And it's a Gnostic text on the origin of the world in the Nag Hammadi library that actually talks about the Phoenix and how the Phoenix was designed to keep the Archons in check. And the Phoenix is like the doom shape. It is something that appears in our world to basically create a whole new cycle. And in creating that new cycle, it does all kinds of it undoes a lot of damage the archons of God. This is in the text. So I don't know if I believe in archons. To me, I've even said on my channel, I believe it's really referring to programming protocols, cataclysmic protocols, design protocols. I stringently believe that we are in a controlled mathematical construct. In any mathematical construct, from the inside, we're going to view cycles and epicycles and phenomena, but really what's happening is the unfolding of control protocols that are acting as governors, doing whatever they're designed to do, whatever they're programmed to do. And in the ancient mindset, they probably recognized this phenomena as well, but they anthropomorphized it. They personalized it into archons. I believe the ancients were far more intelligent than we give them credit for. And I think there's been times when we've been technologically advanced and they recognize these protocols and these things. And then they went through resets and they went through periods of the retardation of human development and they devolved. And then the new texts that were written were highly mythological, like Homer's Odyssey and Homer's Iliad have some really profound things in them. But to the common man who reads these, they're going to see some mythological overtones and they're going to dismiss it all as comedy and crap. But there are some profound things in Hesiod and in Theognis and Lucretius, and we find things in Pliny the Elder that betray that at one time knowledge filters have been a lot. Well, not knowledge filters, but that basically betray the idea that they viewed themselves postmodern. They viewed themselves as if there was a time in the past when things were very advanced, and they weren't living in that past anymore. And even their frames of reference had devolved, like the Hindu Dravidian Maya, the world of illusion. Well, today we call it simulation or holography. Basically, all the same lines.
So then, really quick, you were talking about reality. I'm curious about your take on this. So you were thinking about like a prime reality that is where the oversoul resides. And I just very quickly just looked up the Google definition of the word reality, just because I'm fascinated with sometimes when I hear stuff like this, I'm always trying to go, okay, what's the definition for you on that? So this is just the basic one, but reality is the quality or state of being actual or true, one such as a person, an entity, or an event that is actual, the totality of all things possessing actuality, existence, or essence. So if we're to say that the reality we perceive, like right now, it's the sun just popped out. It was previously cloudy, and we might get some rain later, right? Like that's sort of like
all that's phenomena.
Natural world. Right?
Every bit of that is phenomena, It is all subjective. It may not even be real. It's something perceived by you because your programming was designed to receive that. But you
Yeah,
asked me,
let me, if I could just finish this. So if you were in the same locale as me in British Columbia on the island,
mhm,
you would be viewing the exact same weather conditions as I would, right? You wouldn't be perceiving like snowstorms in the same area. You wouldn't be able to change the external phenomena that we're all seeing at the exact same time. Or I could say we could go to the same place together.
mhm.
That place exists, and we could go and see the same trees and mountain ranges and the eagles' nests that are there. And I could show you around, or we go to Ireland and look at the stone ruins that are there. We
Right.
could all be there together, agreeing that in this moment in time, we are viewing the weather conditions, the natural phenomena simultaneously, and we're all witnessing it together, right? So there's that sort of understanding of reality, and then there's the reality of, okay, we got this thing going on in the Middle East right now. I mean, how much of that we don't know, but we know something's going on. So there's these things that are happening in reality, or like events like 9/11, or these things. It happened in the world that we know, we can communicate with. But then you were talking about this prime reality that is the world of the oversoul. So how do you describe that and explain that through the simulation concept? And do you believe there is a prime reality? We're just sort of blocked from seeing that in this current mode that we're in, or whatever.
Okay, that's a lot to unpack. You asked me a lot of questions. You asked me a lot of questions in that. So I'm going to address it this way. First of all, it is my belief that this construct has uniform programming that we all agree to. We all agree about weather patterns. We agree about that fire is hot, that ice is cold. There are some things that are absolutely unchangeable. But it's just like I say all the time. We're not here to change the world, but you're perfectly qualified and capable of changing your world. That's how advanced this construct is. We can literally change the dynamics of our own existence, and it will not affect the over patterning. It will not affect all the reality tunnels, all the core programming that runs this construct will never change just because you decided to go in a different direction. You became a multimillionaire. You decided to affect hundreds of millions of people in some way. It's never going to change the core programming of the construct. It is a construct. We may be on a holographic flat sheet of silver in a computer in another reality, because the word reality is very general. What you just read to me in that book was very, very general. And it has to be, because there is no way for subjective sentience to ever define the quality of its own existence from within a bubble. It's not going to happen. It would have to be from an objective position outside the bubble to describe what was going on the inside. You can't do that from the inside accurately. There's no true objectivity. Well, this leads to the answer to your question. What is real reality? What is it like on the outside? Well, I'm going to tell you now. I believe I'm an immortal being, and I don't believe these Sims are anything that are singular. I believe there's a multiplicity of simulated realities that are all ongoing for different stages of development. I believe that the oversoul was not a creator. That just didn't just create in a singularity. I believe that the oversoul is eternal, and therefore I have to attach that eternal nature to creation, which means this oversoul never stopped creating. These worlds are ongoing, they're building, they will always need stewards, they will always need more immortals to fill in more dynamic roles. And this is just a learning process that we're going through right now in this particular construct. And then one day, as these resets and these feedback loops continue in the programming, we'll get ejected out of this one and move into the next one. On the outside of this is probably just a more sophisticated sim. It's a spiritual technology. I'm not asking you to understand it or even agree with me, but the only thing I can conclude is this is a mini world type reality. There's no singularity here. We're probably going to experience, or we are experiencing right now, an infinitude of these sims. Call them simulacrum. Call them realities. Whatever we're experiencing now. I just don't believe it's a singular event. This is something we're flowing through. We're going to be flowing through many of them, and I believe that the closer we come into contact with the oversoul, the more evidence of the existence of the oversoul that we're going to find as we live through these. This one here, this one's a bitch. This one's a really hard sim. It's very believable. It's got a lot of data included into it to make us believe that certain things happened in the past, and therefore we're moving to a certain direction in the future. There's a lot of programming here that is designed to deceive, and every bit of it is just to make this place a whole lot more believable. But in the end, the only thing that's really real are the three of us having this conversation, and those souls that are listening to our voices when this is finally posted. Even our avatars belong to this construct. And we're going to move on. Eventually, we're going to move on from it. But on the outside of this one is just another one that's more sophisticated. And then another one beyond that is more sophisticated. If there's an ultimate reality, I don't know. I've never even speculated on my own channel beyond the fact that I believe that right now, as far as I can take my own speculations, is that we're in a sim within a sim.
In terms of history, you would say that when somebody like a Plato or a Velikovsky or the Maya, anyone talks about a cataclysmic event, those are resets, right? According to you, the thing gets reset and starts again, right?
Right. From our perspective inside the construct, a reset is terrible cataclysmic phenomena. But there's something else, and I've documented this quite extensively in my published books and on my channel. There's also other things going on during these periods. There's edits. There's profound changes. There's paradigm shifts in people's ability to take in data. It's so strange. And it's in our mythology. It's in our traditions. It's so bizarre that the last time it happened, we actually have quite a bit of data for that one. Even though the construct does a good job of covering its own crack, in a lot of ways, it doesn't do that. Let me give you an example. I have published a lot in 3 different books and probably 84, 85 videos about the phenomena of 1902. When most people come to my channel, they're baffled. Like, I haven't heard anything about 1902. And they start watching all the videos like, holy shit. And then they do their own research and they realize mainstream media in 1902, all the big newspapers and stuff, totally ignored everything. How's it possible? And some newspapers don't even have, in the microfiche, 1902 has been removed. I showed this with the Los Angeles Herald. I went through all the 1800s all the way up into 1940s and showed you the only year missing was 1902. I've done this with a lot of periodicals, almanacs, and it's amazing these edits that have happened and how all these Fortune 500 companies all have their origin in parent companies that mysteriously all appeared in 1902. So as I document all these things, other people have helped me to say, hey man, look, I was really critical and I just had to do some of my own homework and I'm looking at it and I found something pretty interesting. And another guy, Gary Warmerdam, he showed me some really interesting things. Hey, look, all these gazettes, all these little hometown gazettes we can get microfiche on, they're all talking about it. All the strange phenomena. A new red star appears in the sky, gets bigger and bigger. Red dust, red rain, earthquakes, volcanic activity, strange hooded figures appearing in cities and mass people disappearing everywhere. All this people who went through it and actually experienced some of the phenomena, their minds fractured, they filled up the insane asylums. Other people went right through it, like the collective, like those you were talking about earlier, Michael, about those who just never get it. So ingrained with the collective and the media, they just went right through it, having no idea that something unusual happened. And then there's people like Charles Fort, researchers who researched all of this stuff around 1902 and were so baffled about all the conflicting reports that they just gave up and said, you know what, 1902 was some weird dark. He published this. He said it was some other dark age. We're just never going to understand what happened. Orphan trains, all kinds of weird stuff happened in 1902. And Gary Warmerdam had seen that no major newspapers reported anything unusual in 1902, but all the little hometown gazettes from Europe, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, all across North America, Canada, it's the small little gazette they're all reporting these things. So was it censorship or the AI that is governing all the protocols, the editing protocols, just not thinking about going that deep into the censorship. It just edited out all the major news sources, but it left all the tens of thousands of little. They only reached 300. They only got 300 people in their neighborhood, or their reach might have been only 1,000. The little gazette spread around 1,000. So these are the things that I document, and independently, anybody can accuse me of being, out of my fucking mind. Anybody can say, Jason, you're tripping. But when you take the entire list of all the phenomena from 1902 and all the source materials, then it paints a picture. Something did happen. Something unusual happened. So it's not just 1902. It was also 1764. It was also 1626. Going back every 138 years, we have this phenomenon. And it's really interesting that it's 138. We have this knowledge of the number of the fear of the number 138 in many ancient texts. And this is what I've isolated. I have videos showing this number in all these ancient texts. It's always a negative connotation. All these periods in time, it's amazing. All the ancient authors that have mentioned numbers like 138 and 414, 552, 828, 1626, 2208, all these like Aristarchus, the world is destroyed every 24, 84 years. The ancient Mayan belief in great cosmic cycles when the world is totally renewed every 27, 60 years. I have so many of these. Every single one of these numbers is divisible on 138. And I show these pyramids that have 138 niches, dragon heads. I show the association to 138 is everywhere in the ancient world, and it's involved with cycles and renewal. It was the number of the phoenix in the ancient world, the phoenix cycle of 552 years, which is 138 times 4. So this editing has been going on for a very long period of time, and the only reason we have so much evidence of it is because it seems like the editing process only deals with the universals, the big media, the big reports, and it never really goes deep into all the little small legends, small periodicals. This is where we get our data.
Very interesting. Where can people go to research more of that?
Really just my website is designed for research. Whatever you're interested in, you just go to archaix.com. It'll take you wherever you want to go.
Okay, archaix.com. Yeah. Charles Fort, very interesting because his works alone show you anomaly after anomaly that has no rational explanation. Isn't that right? Especially when it comes to cataclysmic events.
Yeah, none. I have the complete work somewhere in here. I've got an old 1950s hardback, the complete works of Charles Fort. I'm a Charles Fort fan, but I was really impressed with his material in 1902 and how he was even stumped. And despite being the father of Fortean observations and all that, he even agreed that, man, we'll probably never get to the bottom of what happened in 1902, but that something very unusual happened worldwide in 1902 was his conclusion.
So now there's science fiction. Oh, David, did you have another point?
Oh no, that's good. Yeah, I'm also a lot of Charles Fort stuff. Very interesting. I think there's many ways to look at it all, but I love seeing all the options out there because in the end, we're all here trying to investigate this mystery, right? And there's many ways to look at it. I think that's a positive thing.
Right.
Well, right. And there are science fiction writers. I mentioned archons before for a reason, and that is because one way of interpreting what you're talking about is that there are beings who create these simulations as a kind of a game for themselves. They're malefic beings who have created these epochs, shall we call it, of history, just as a child would play a war game type of scenario. And they play out these games over and over again. And when one doesn't work out in one way, the whole thing can be reset and start again with a different outcome. The whole thing, in other words, being planned by beings of a higher, greater intelligence. How do you think of that concept?
I've toyed with that, but like almost everything that I've given you so far, except for the facts that I've enumerated, were all my opinions about our reality, and so this is opinion as well. I mean, I have played with that idea that because it is my view that this is a quarantined area and that things are allowed to play out here. So it's quarantined because whoever's on the outside whoever of us are on the outside that allowed for this on the inside to develop in this way. We didn't want any risk of any cross-contamination with the real reality on the outside. And when I say real reality, I mean whatever the next level is of perception on the outside of this construct. So I have played with the idea that this is all just video game. I mean, remember, one of my tenets in Archaix is if I can show anything has been proved once, then it's probably always been proved somewhere. This is one of my research tenets. It's so if we're now entering the realm of virtual reality to the degree that we're now having sensory deprivation equipment put on our heads, so it can emulate with vibrations and sound and harmonics. It can actually make us feel pleasure, make us feel like we just got hit with a shell, or we just had a car accident, and it's all right there around our head. We already have this technology now. So who's to say 50 years from now we haven't perfected the technology to the point like Metaverse wants to do next year? They're rolling out next year with their new visors, and they say it's going to be an interactive experience. And they even have Fortune 500 companies right now already making plans to have many of their employees go to work from home, but they're actually going to work in the metaverse. They're planning on paying out fantasy credits. People are going to be going to their jobs in the metaverse. This isn't supposition. This is all public domain knowledge. They're really planning for this. There are already real estate agents who are selling real estate in the metaverse, and there are people buying it. They're going to roll out this. It's going to be worldwide. They're going to roll it out, and I'm even on board. It's going to be like a simulation within a simulation, but I'm even on board with the idea that even the 2020 COVID narrative that rolled out, one of the objectives was to see how well the infrastructure can continue if only essential workers are being used. And it was successful. They saw, man, we shut down all these cities and we still had everything up and running and just fine. We didn't have a massive die off from starvation. Everything ran fine with just essential workers delivering groceries, electricians, plumbers, big contractors. That's it. And the reason for that is because the world that they want us to move into within the next 10 to 15 years is the meta world. This meta world will have essential workers bringing your groceries, but you're going to be paying your bills in the metaverse with your meta credits. You'll be working for companies that are in the metaverse. All this is planned. None of this is fantasy and made up. This is literally putting people who are already in a construct into another level of the simulation, a whole simulated world. And I'm even on board with the idea with the apocalypse programming, all this eschatology that's been programmed into this construct by which we've got from the Zoroastrian writings, the Old Testament, New Testament, all these protocols that have been embedded. It's pure coding to get us to fear the future. All this is in there. I am on board with the fact that the entire apocalypse scenario won't even happen in this layer of the construct. It'll happen inside the metaverse. They're going to experience all that in the near future after they have participated in a golden age Sodom and Gomorrah type society where everybody's going to be participating, and you'll have 80 and 90-year-olds in there doing the things that teenagers and 20-year-olds are doing. In the metaverse, it doesn't matter how old you are because they've jacked your mind into a construct. Your avatar is what you choose. So this is the world we're moving into. This is what I see. This is what I see where we're going. And this is why all these platforms don't really give a damn about truthers, don't give a damn about people telling the truth anymore. They're really not even censoring anymore. I've seen a lot of evidence of them not censoring. So they don't care because they know when they roll this out, the masses are going to jump. They're going to go in there because they're going to be able to do things in that environment they can't do in real reality. And they spent 25 years making the world such a fucked up place that people are just going to willingly just dive into the metaverse. They're going to go to sleep at night. They're going to wake up, get back in the metaverse. The essential workers are going to deliver everything they need.
You took the words out of my mouth. The next question, because when I parallel what you're speaking about in the hypothetical, and I bring sort of the perspective of philosophy, and as me and David have talked about innumerable times on this channel, people don't like reality. Okay, now given our conversation, we can put it in brackets. even if it was the real reality, people don't like it. And that reality includes the operations of their bodies on a somatic level. So I've done work on post-humanism as well. And it wasn't as explicit as what you're talking about when it came to predicting the future. But obviously, anyone who's seen my work knows that this is exactly, commensurate with what I was hinting at, which is given that people don't like reality, and one of the most, when I say that, I don't mean that flippantly. I mean one of the great core, innermost complexes or syndromes who are beingness. I mean, really ontological is the disdain of nature, of time, of being, and of reality. And the boys that you're talking about know that and have known it for a long fucking time. And so this dovetails with what you're talking about, because then what would be the mentality of people like that is to create simulations in which, knowing full well we'll have customers, we'll have them around the fucking block. You can put these headsets at the corner of a street or
Mhm.
inside a mall, like those kids' games, you just sit in it and it takes you. Yeah, we will literally be putting in our coins to have this on a temporary basis or on a much more, wearing them actually, as the great science fiction shows have said, 24/7, just to get away from the reality as it is. Now, if people were really to think deeply about that animosity or antipathy to nature, antipathy to reality, I think a lot of what you're saying starts to come into view for those who've never thought about it before and are not familiar with all the backstories of Charles Ford and the great sci-fi writers. But this is plausible when somebody looks at the psychology of the antipathy, and dissects them. And it's one of the things that I believe for a very, very long time. And for me, any extrapolation then, as you're doing, about the post-human world has plausibility because it always is predicated upon this disdain for the reality that everybody has around it. And it's not surprising then that the virtual reality people are going to try and, like as you said, give you these avatars, make it so that reality does in fact morph and change according to your desire, that your sexual needs and all sorts of libidinous needs are available. All of these things that will be taking away disenchantment, resistance to the life that, because again, if three of us don't like it, so fucking what? There's 500,000 people in a state of such poverty and degradation or health issues, all throughout the world. He'll jump at it. So the crowd who goes, no, I'm not interested in this, is fucking, like snowflakes
Yeah, there's
melting in a colossal group of people. Like you said, the aged was one group of people who will go for this. Fear of death will be the great impulse. But that's not the only ones. What about people who have physical disabilities? What about the poverty-stricken people of
right,
India? What
right.
they have plenty of customers.
Anybody who doesn't like their life, yes, 100%,
Well, the
100%.
other thing too that kind of crosses my mind is I've been doing a lot of deep study into the mentality behind these great reset people, your Yuval Harari types, and whatnot, and they're all fans of simulation. They believe in it wholeheartedly, and that's their justification for their belief that in imperialism in a way, and they believe in deterministic reality, meaning, and I wondered about that because if we get into simulation, if you think of what a simulation is on a computer, it's deterministic. They can provide you some options where you think you're running around in a video game, but it's still limited to the deterministic coding that's put into it. And so I guess with this idea, they justify statements like, Yoel Harari was doing a talk, and he was talking about human rights. And he was saying human rights are just a fantasy that we came up with.
Right,
It's just a fake thing
right.
we came up with. And so
You make a really good
I guess you
point.
get to the premise of their arguments. And their arguments for things like depopulation and a hyper-controlled society through artificial intelligence, creating a simulation or whatever. To me, these guys are the champions of simulation, but they want to control it in a very particular way. And they believe that humans do not possess free will, which is what justifies their belief in a totalitarian system and the whole thing. So where do you sit on the differences with their version of simulation theory?
Okay, well, if the elite, if the elite scientists, if the elite think tanks, if the elite organizations, non-elected, major think tank organizations, the George Soros type, if they're all on board with the fact that we're living on a construct, I'm going to pay attention because what they're doing is the exact opposite. And that right there is very intriguing to me. And what I mean is while they maintain the belief that we're in a falsified reality, and yet what do they 100% push? Materialism. They want the population to be totally on board with materialism because they can be controlled that way, while they themselves know that we're in some type of morphogenetic field, something that can be changed, something that can be utilized to the benefit of those who know how to use it, because it is a tool. This is what I teach on my channel. Reality will reciprocate with you, and it doesn't matter if you are, I'll just use him because I already mentioned him. It doesn't matter if you're George Soros and you've got billions at your disposal, or if you're just an 18-year-old single mother with a 1-year-old kid and you're just trying to make it. The field doesn't recognize a difference. All it recognizes is what you're projecting and what your avatar is doing to support the projection. That's all it cares about. So in answer to your question, I would pay very close attention to the people that openly claim that we live in a construct. I happen to believe it myself, but from totally different vantage point. Not because they said it, but these same people are also promoting the idea that we live in a physical reality and that people's physical needs need to be taken care of. And this right here seems to be a control mechanism. So I really don't know much about this dude Harari you're talking about. I don't know if he's just a puppet or if he really is a member of the elite. I'm kind of the opinion now that anybody whose face we have ever seen in the media isn't really the elite. They're just a puppet of the elite. I really don't believe the true elite are even known today. They could be, like Michael here said, they could be just archons. The true elite may not even be existing here at all. But this, I don't want to provide the scenario for you that I think that everything is just 100% simulated and all the government thinks everything is simulated, because I don't. There are materialists in the government as well. And I believe that they're on board with the Phoenix phenomenon. I believe since 1973 and 74, when the U.S. Congress passed a whole series of very quiet bills about funding underground cities and underground biospheres, they've been on board for the fact that we're suffering these resets. And I believe they're preparing for it now. And I believe a lot of the things that are going on in American and in world politics unfolding right now is all staging, it's all misdirection, as more men and more materials are being shuttled into these underground facilities in preparation of an event.
So, David, you interviewed Richard Sauder, didn't you, at one point? Have you heard of him from Tunnels and Bases?
No, I haven't.
Wow.
I have hundreds of pages. I got hundreds of pages of photographs of underground. I know they exist. I've seen the pictures of them, and I've seen the legislation. But no, I haven't heard of that guy at all.
It's good to get into
Yeah, he's written a book, Underground Tunnels and Bases. Maybe you can send a link. Richard Sauder, you can find him on Amazon, I suppose. But another one I've been wanting to ask you since the beginning, based on some of the work you're talking about, is Julian Jaynes, professor from Princeton. Have you heard of him?
I'm not familiar with his work. I don't know his name.
Yeah, he died a while back. I believe he was at Princeton as well as Stanford professor, and he talked about a thing called the bicameral.
Well, the bicameral mind. I've read the book. Okay, I do. I have read that guy then. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, the bicameral period, which is again a reset period for Princeton in BC, and it seems to fit. You could map his work over what you're saying about another monumental moment when consciousness itself changed. Now he's a scientist, right? But as you know, these are the source material for other theories that they themselves had no clue when investigating. So he talks about a change in terms of consciousness that might have even led to the asymmetric brain that we have with the right and left hemisphere, things like that. But certainly the idea of consciousness. And he talks about sort of like archonic voices of the gods, so to speak, that used to be the ones who directed human action. So that human beings were literally blood puppets who operated by these audio hallucinations. And then when the voices of the gods receded, he claims about 3000 BC, we were left then with an autonomous will and were thrown into absolute social chaos because of that. Losing the instructional voices of the gods led us to have then, the internal metaphorical space within the I, which is entirely illusional. He said, like he said, it becomes the subjectivity you're talking about. In other words, he dates it to this period.
That is really interesting. It's a really interesting date. Yes. That what you're describing to me, calendrically, that was. I mean, I know he's only talking about an average. He's talking about a circa. He's talking about not the exact 3000, but that time period. I mean, that's Newgrange. That's the Scorpion King. That's the Etana in the Sumerian record, 31 BC. That's the beginning of the Mayan long count, the beginning of the Olmec, the Quicha, the Zapotec records, all the calends, the Venus almanacs. That's the exact same time. We're talking about the 30th century BC. Was when we had all of this. Even in the Bible, it's really interesting. At that time, we have the ministry of Enoch or Canaan. We have many pseudepigraphical records talking about in the Book of Enoch, the Book of the Secrets of Enoch, Book of Jubilees, Book of Jasher. They all talk about that. That's the dating for Surid of the ancient Egyptian Coptic king who built the pyramids. And so that time period exploded with activity. I have documented it widely because it seems to be the beginning century for almost every calendar in the ancient world.
Yes, and this is why, and also he claims that this is the realm of, one of the things is the rise of priesthoods, the rise of divination, man in an extreme psychotic state, looking through the guidance, not being able to find it, and therefore inventing all sorts of replacements. And some of that is symbolism, divination, even language, and priesthoods and governmental officials come into being at that time as representatives of the archons, that is the gods. When the voice of the gods disappeared, we took the warlord's voice instead. We took the chieftain, we took the king.
Right.
And kingship, it's not that it can't be maybe dated from before that period. He did say that. But he said our reliance now on the tribal leader and the hierarchy of which he then creates as a simulation with all the meritocracy, the newer Freemasonic organizations would have come into their own. And your encyclopedic knowledge, you see, this is why, as you were talking, I thought you must know other coincidental things that happened at that time.
Well, there are many.
Yeah, very, very important thesis. So I was wondering if you'd read his Bicameral Mind, Origins of Consciousness.
I have read the Bicameral Mind. I remember the book, and I read it probably 7-8 years ago.
Yeah.
It's I don't remember a lot of the details, and as a matter of fact, I wasn't even a simulationist back when I read that book. And so simulation theory was a very recent development for me, like within the last 3 years.
Well, what jogged my mind about it was that the subjective space that you were talking about, and we've dealt with it from another point of view as well, but the illusion of objectivity, we dealt with that earlier in the summer. That given that if you extrapolate the nature of the mind, then it's knowledge about itself. Right. And that objectivity just doesn't fit into the equation. But Julian Jaynes is an interesting point here because he also negates it. He says that the idea that we have that we are an I, the central, is based in metaphor. Mm-hmm. Meaning it's not reality. It's a metaphorical space where our so-called inner self or ego or I or whatever it resides, and yet it's illusionary. You don't, when you open a physical head and look around, there's no internal space to speak of. So where's the self located? And that's in other words, the subjective space. It's illusory from that point of view. And he has some very interesting things to say about it.
Yeah, it's not here. I mean, it's like looking through a periscope. Your eyes aren't way up there; they're right here. That's why I say we're on the outside of the construct, and what we're in here, this is just a perceptive apparatus. Our interface with the field, when we are actually somewhere else. We're just
So
injecting.
that's somewhere else, Jason, just to kind of go back a bit, because I'm just so curious about how you see this different than some of these overlords today see it,
Mhm.
is do you believe that we as beings, whether, or how would you describe free will? Like, do we possess free will as beings on the outside of the construct? Do we have free will as being on the inside of the construct? Or is it very much like, the Matrix, where his free will really only exists outside of the Matrix, not when he's in the Matrix, because it's sort of like
Okay,
programmable for him.
I'm gonna
How do you see that?
I'm going to define free will as I've experienced it, because I haven't experienced it on the outside as far as memory goes. I can't convey something I can't remember. So I don't know about the outside, but in here, I do know, like I told you earlier in this presentation, that this construct has dictates that we all agree to. Fire is hot, ice is cold. We know that we're going to have to stay on the ground because we don't have wings. Now, we can manipulate this programming by creating manipulations, such as aviation. There are many things that we can do to modify our experiences within the construct, but there are also many universals here that we all agree to and that we can't undo. So it's like I also said that you can't change the world, but you can change your world. That's how dynamic we are. We can interface with the field and create a whole new reality. A whole new reality for ourselves and for those around us, but we can't do it for the entire world. So when it comes to free will, I am only free as per the limitations set by the construct, such as concepts of gravity. I don't know if gravity is real, but it's something that I've been taught, and I know I stay on the ground. If I jump up, I'm coming back down. So I know that right there is going to be very real. I have never fallen up into the sky. So I know if I climb a tree and I lose my footing, I'm gonna hit the ground. And I also know that the conflict dictates that I'm gonna experience some pain. So I'm gonna feel that pain. But there are other things about my reality for which I do have free will. I do have free will. It's called breaking pattern. From the day we're born all the way through our growth and development, all the way to the day we die, we are always shoved into programming niches. These programming niches, this collective dungeon programming is what I call it. It's what makes a Southern Baptist a Southern Baptist. If a Southern Baptist, if a soul agrees to the tenets of the Southern Baptist Convention and begins to go into church in a Southern Baptist church, then that person's reality is going to draw to them more personalities and more phenomena that comport with how they interpret reality. They're going to begin seeing the signs that the Southern Baptist mindset is absolutely true. And then that programming is going to they're going to become a part of a collective called Southern Baptists. And you're going to begin processing information the way Southern Baptist programming tells them the filters that are involved. So, same thing for a Buddhist. This is why I've taken a lot of criticism for this, but this is why I have said very vocally on YouTube multiple times, be careful about the NDE channels out here. The near-death experience channels, be careful, because if you're listening to Farsi, if you're listening to YouTube in Farsi, you're going to be hearing stories of how the merits visit them on the other side or outside the construct or after death. If you're listening in India, people in India are talking about how they have these experiences with Rakshasas in their NDEs. Over here in Texas, these Southern Baptists are telling you that they saw Michael at the pearly gates escorted in and caught a glimpse of Jesus in the distance beyond the pearly gates and golden streeted heaven. It's all by frames of reference. So if people having near-death experiences are all seeing different things according to the culture and the information that was saturated, then that means the NDE experience is false. It's false. You didn't die. That's why it's called near-death experience.
Yeah.
It's not. You didn't really die. Your central nervous system interacting with the information stored in your brain is searching for meaning. It's trying to figure out what the hell is going on during that small traumatic period when you weren't really you, or your consciousness was separated from your avatar. Whatever was going on, you didn't die. So I'm always warning people about that because the construct can be very deceitful. But the NDE is very interesting. It's interesting because it shows that you are not your avatar, that you are independent of the very meat suit that you occupy to interface with reality around us. So my free will comes real easy when I decide to break pattern. The human experience is all about patterning. We are fit into reality molds. We are fit into, oh, you're an ex-con YouTuber. You think you're all that. And then I suffer on a daily basis the very things that people impose upon me through their imagination, through their actions toward me, through their comments toward me, through their emails toward me, through their attitude toward me when I meet them in public, whatever, be good or bad. All right. But I also have a choice on a daily basis because every single morning is pregnant with possibilities. I just have to take them. The field is always going to feed me the experiences that comport with my vision of myself. But I can also get up early in the morning and instead, if I go get my coffee from the same spot and then go sit in the same coffee shop just to people watch for an hour before I begin my day, if I've been doing this for 20 years, I can break a pattern and not do it one morning. And instead, go jogging, even though I haven't jogged in 20 years. Run as far as I can, then walk down a street I've never been down. As soon as you break pattern, not only are you exhibiting free will, but you're also causing the construct of problem because the construct is relying on the conservation of energy. It is subject to the law of conservation of energy, of the law of diminishing returns. It is subject to many of the laws that we have identified. The construct does not have an infinite power source. This is why it creates dungeon programming. This is why it wants to compartmentalize the human experience, fit you in a niche, because that programming has already been created. It's already been created. It expends no energy doing that, but it expends a tremendous amount of energy for a soul that breaks pattern and begins to do something else because now it has to knit in real time. It has to create for you holography. It has to create all the sensations that make this construct real to you. And it has absolutely nothing. It has no way to anticipate your behavior. Once you break pattern, that's when the greatest changes will come in your life. You will meet dynamic souls in new situations. I teach this on my channel, and I've got thousands of comments on my channel where people adopted the method and they were shocked how fast it happened for them. When you do something, anything, wrote over and over and over and over, the construct thinks it knows you, it anticipates you, and it feeds you that same experience day after day after day after day. But as soon as you break pattern and do something else, the construct is paying attention. It does not understand the breaking precedents. This is free will. It has no idea what you're doing, and it begins to build a whole new reality tunnel around you. And then panic and just starts bringing all kinds of. This is how you meet new people, new situations, take on new data, become a whole new person. Yeah, go ahead.
It's almost like the construct. Uh, when you start to do that kind of life, it forces you back in line. In Dune, Frank Herbert said, "Walk without rhythm. That's the only way to break the worm." Not just to walk without rhythm. Is exactly what you're saying. The moment that you then do that, other forces are arraigned against you to nudge you back in line. So this is where life then becomes very, very difficult.
I agree. I agree with you. I do agree with you, Michael, 100%. Because I've even told my listeners that, hey man, expect resistance. It's going to try and corral you back into the original programming. There's a break point. There's a break point when you continue to break pattern, continue to go your own way. It expends a whole lot less energy just giving you what you want than trying to corral you back. Once it realizes that you're adamant, free will does exist, but you got to work for it. No doubt.
Well, maybe that's the biggest proof of it, that you have to work, and that you can't. You can break consensus with the herd around you, the people around you, the public mind around you. The fact that you can do it, and the fact that it's so hard to do, and that even just the minds of the people are kind of like those crabs in a bucket around you to pull you back down to that level, because they identify you as a threat if you're the outsider, if you're deviating from the consensus trends that they're in. And so, but the fact that you can do that and go through the trials that are going to come your way when you do it, and it's so hard to do, you have to motivate yourself to do it. To me, that's one of the biggest proofs that you do have at least that amount of free will.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to determinism, you wouldn't even know that the phenomenon of determinism existed if it did without the free will to stand back to see it. So determinism is only a concept we even have through the free will.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
My-
no knowledge would be possible with it. Yeah.
Michael, have you read Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe you have. You've already said two things that I read out of that book. I remember. Yeah, I like Nietzsche.
Yeah.
Real
I
dry
have
read, but he's got a lot of positive things to say.
Yeah, I wouldn't say he was a first class philosopher, but
Right.
he talked about philosophical matters in a very unique and artistic and creative way. Whether he himself was a philosopher uh, of the first rank, it's not
Yeah.
just like Jean-Paul Sartre. You can have a lot of interesting things to say about philosophy
Right.
without actually being, an A-class philosopher. He was talking about the philosophers of the past. He was critiquing them. He was
Right.
analyzing their work and coming up with oddball and quite whimsical and insightful things about their, other people's philosophy. That doesn't quite make him
I agree.
structured philosopher.
Yeah, I agree. My personal favorite, and I take some slack for this, but my personal favorite, I've read everything in Arthur Schopenhauer. But I'm
Well, Nietzsche's philosophy cannot be even understood until you've read Schopenhauer, since he was probably Nietzsche's greatest influence.
yeah,
And he was mostly just commenting on Schopenhauer's work.
I get it.
Well, this is just fascinating. So, Jason, you've got this new book. Have you done, and you've got your show. What do you have in the pipeline? You working on anything right now that's coming up soon or anything like that?
Well, I have refused a couple invitations on principle alone. One of them was the Conscious Life Expo in Los Angeles. There's like 15,000 people attend every year. They wanted me to attend, but it took a few days, but they finally sent me a list of everybody else who's going to be there. And I just don't want to be associated with some of those names. And I just told them no.
Thank you very much.
I told him no. And then there's also Sasha Stone. He's got this deal going on. He's trying to he invited me to be a member of his something initiative he's got going on, and I had to decline that because I've been very vocal on YouTube calling out the Patriot pacification agents like 107 and Sasha Stone and several of those.
Yeah, TV, Open Minds.
Oh yeah, I've been all over them. So I even made a joke recently in the past week. If there's any channel hosts out there that want to join me, I'm about to start the Anti-Gaia Network. I'm gonna be challenging to open debates every single member of Gaia to defend their positions. And I've already provided all my data sets free to the public, so willing to debate that as well. But like Graham Hancock and Billy Carson are two of them that I've been calling out routinely for misinformation in both of their books. And it's nothing personal, but when you're given a platform, when you got guys that have 1.2 million subscribers, and they openly let you talk about things that can easily be shown to be false, and I can even use your own bibliography published in your own book to show that the data that's in these books overturns the very thing you're telling the public now. And I can't get a voice, and they won't even respond to my emails or anything, but they still let Graham Hancock come on there and talk about all this BS. So yeah, I've been calling out the archaeoastronomy community and all that because there's a single event in world history that is absolutely ignored, but it's so well documented. This one event overturned almost every archaeoastronomy dating beyond the 8th century BC. Anything older than the 8th century BC can be dated chronologically, it can be dated archaeologically. There are different relative dating methods, man, that can give a general accuracy. But when it comes to archaeoastronomy, which deals with the stellosphere and all that, beyond the 8th century BC, there's nothing that can be accurately documented because of this event. And I have published my data sets on the distance of the year before that date, what happened on that date, and then what the year was after that date. And there is no way this zodiacal age dating that all these authors are using can be true. And the only way it can be promoted is by ignoring this tremendous amount of data. So I'm looking for some controversy. I'm looking for some debates on these issues, and so far all of them are just absolutely silent. So I've been very vocal in calling them out. And I got a lot of people who have sent the links to all my challenge videos to them, and go to their Facebook Messenger and all that. But they all tell me the same thing. They get deleted, they get blocked and stuff.
One thing is, have you heard of? Because that information is on your YouTube channel, right? First of all.
Yes, absolutely, every bit of it.
And then I wanted to ask you, are you familiar with the work of Anthony Peake? He's been a guest on our show. Some of the stuff you speak of touches on, especially with NDEs. Have you heard of him?
Anthony Peake is a familiar name, but I can't associate him to anything right now. I can't remember where I heard him.
His first good book is Feeding the Ferryman, and he has his own YouTube channel. Maybe see what you think of his work. He's very, very up on his latest book was also about the quantum universe, and it's an excellent. I think it's called The Hidden Universe.
Okay.
It's the latest one, but his first one, Cheating the Ferryman, is about NDEs and the simulation. So it'd be very interesting to maybe hook you guys up. If you check his work.
Okay.
He has guests on his show. So just in case down the line you want to go on his show to talk, he'd make a good one to go on.
Okay. Oh, you know what? I just snapped. I went on a tangent, and you have to understand on my channel, I'm pretty popular for going entertaining tangents, but. You asked me a question, I didn't really answer it. You asked me what my plans are. Well, I'm going to be very direct with you. I wasn't joking about the anti-Gaia network. It may not be called that, but I'm not going to be quiet, and I'm not going to be ignored either. Not when I have so much easily verifiable data sets. And I'm going to keep twisting the dagger. I'm going to keep getting popular. I'm going to keep growing. Whether it's on my Archaix TV or whether it's on YouTube or whether it's on Facebook. I have a large following on Facebook. So wherever the platform is, I'm not going to stop. There's going to come a point where Randall Carlson, Graham Hancock, Robert Bovell, Robert Schock, these men are going to have to look at this data. They're going to have to answer to it. There's going to come a time where they just can't ignore me anymore. I'm getting exponentially more and more traction, and more people are contacting these men. And they know, they're all very aware, but so far they've been very quiet. But they're not going to be able to do that. Sooner or later, their own followings are going to be asking them questions. Hey, man, why are you steadily ignoring this guy? He is challenging to debate all these things you've published in your books. So,
they're gatekeepers.
I know they are.
Gaia TV, Conscious Media Network. You don't know how many times they've invited me to talk at their rotten events from way back, and I've turned them down every time for personal reasons. But these people are perfidious. It's unspeakable how many confrontations I've had with them, and there's others. There's David Wilcox, there's Jay Wiedner.
Mm-hmm.
The list of these charlatan fuckers goes on and on and on.
Yeah, I agree.
You kind of got to, this goes on and on and on.
I'm not done. You know what? I got one life to live here. I don't fear death. Don't even give a damn. I even say it on my channel frequently. I said, hey man, there's going to come a point where you have to either answer to me or you shoot me in the face because I'm not going to get quiet. I got some really interesting videos coming up. I'm about to do some more call outs. I'm enjoying it, but also educate people. It's not all about the aggression. I also do very educational live videos, and I'm always putting my community onto my latest research. Whenever I read a book in this library, I share it in a live video. I show them what I find. It's all.
When you talk, you walk your talk. Dawn contacted me to be on your channel. I mean, what more? You see, it's the very opposite of what we're talking about these other chumps do.
Yeah.
It's just that I prefer to have you on here, and I'm so glad you came on.
Well, actually, it's a measure of respect. I should have done that before, but I wasn't really paying attention. She was just so excited about you, but really, out of respect, I should have done that and said, hey, can I come on your channel and talk and like that? Because really, you've been established for years. I've been published since 2006, but I've only been public for 3 years. So you've had a lot more traction than me over the years.
It's all good. Yeah, I like what you're doing and the speculativeness. I always believed that the people I always thought when I got into this type of subject matter that it would be as open-minded as you are, and the speculation would be there. And rather than trying to get a hobby horse and then just ride that to the absolute nth degree and hope that you get viral, and powerful and big. I've never seen it that way. I've seen it as being mavericks. I've seen it as being entrepreneurs. I've seen it as being, amateurs, but genuine from the heart. And that's what I think you are. So again, big thanks for coming on, Jason.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Get you back on later.
Yeah, I'll come on. Just let me know when. Or actually, let my manager know. She's pretty much taking over.
Well, she was great in the emails, so say hi to her for us, and we'll be in touch again, Jason. Fascinating stuff. I took a lot of notes. I gave a lot of people stuff to think about, which is what we're all about here. Turn everything around, look at it from different perspectives. And this is what we need to do because we're looking into one of the greatest mysteries of all time. So really appreciate the chat and all the best. We'll put your links below. And so thanks to both of you. Phenomenal conversation. Thanks to all of our members for continuing to make this possible. Go check out Jason's work, get some fresh perspectives, and we'll continue our research and inquiry here on Unslaved. So stay tuned. We'll talk to everybody soon. Cheers, everybody.
Awesome.
Boom. That's it. Well done, gentlemen. I should have that up in a couple days. And Jason, I don't know if you have I'll send you a login if you don't have a login already, so you can check that out.
Oh, Dawn just subscribed. We have in her office. This is my studio, but in her office, she has this huge screen. She already subscribed to Unslaved earlier this morning.
Okay, stuff. All right, well done. Well,
Big thanks. Big thanks for that. Thanks for coming on, spending your time with us to share this. It's a refreshing, very refreshing. So best of luck with your work, mate. Thanks a lot.
Next time I talk, I might be able to tell you something about these. 18,
old dusty books, man.
these are all 3 volumes of Ancient History of Ireland, 1842.
Oh wow.
Yep.
What? By Jeffrey Keating?
I'm about to tell you who it is by right now. I'm about to show you. Let's see. Yeah, I've got. Oh, I'm sorry. 1803. I'm sorry. And it's by O'Halloran, Esquire. I'm about to show you right now. No, I don't really know. Maybe you know more than I do. I'm about to show you on this camera right now.
Yeah. Oh, the animals. Yeah.
It's 1803. See, the name is O'Halloran.
Yeah.
No,
That's not one I've heard of, but the great scholar Jeffrey Keating, the Annals of the Four Masters. Yeah, that's a hell of a subject we should talk about sometime down the line.
yeah, I've done some pretty deep dives into the Paleolithic Maritime Empire, all the mariner races in the second millennium BC, Tuatha De Danann, the Dananites, and all that. So it's really fascinating history. It's even more fascinating how the Christian scribes incorporated that into the how they changed some of it, but they kept the chronology, but then they turned it into the stone of Jacob's pillow, and how they basically bastardized it, but it was originally the Danann. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, they twisted it. As soon as they got hold of it, they kind of morphed it and changed the dates. You're quite right.
It's awesome stuff.
Well, great stuff, guys. All the best there, Jason, and we'll stay in touch, man.
All righty, y'all let me know when you want to do it again.
Sounds good. We'll do. Have a good one, boys.
You
Cheers.
too.